Today we are going to paper piece one section of the Purple Angles quilt. Grab your paper foundations and your fabric, and I'll see you at the sewing machine.
I'm Andy, and this is True Blue Quilts, a place to enjoy, experiment, and excel as we quilt. The Purple Angles pattern can be purchased for instant download at truebluequilts.com. One block makes a lovely 12-inch pillow, or combine several blocks for a full-size quilt.
We are starting with the wedge, this kite shape. On my patterns, I include a measurement for the size of fabric you need. For this section, we need several pieces of the medium shape and one piece of the dark shape. You follow the numbers on the pattern to place your fabric, and that tells you what you're sewing. It's color by numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first step is to attach the pattern to my first piece of fabric. You can pin it in place, but I like to use a glue stick. So I put a little dab of glue on the wrong side of the paper and press my fabric in place. Just a little dab will hold it because you're going to be sewing that in just a second. And then you hold that paper up to the light to make sure that the fabric covers the whole shape that you're trying to stitch. Once you have that first piece of fabric in place, the paper is secured to the wrong side of my first fabric. We can start with the 4 steps of paper piecing: fold, trim, add a piece, sew. The first step of folding, you're going to find the line between piece 1 and piece 2, and you are going to fold on the line. I like to use a postcard to secure that edge to give me something firm to position everything. We use the add a quarter ruler to line up, and it pushes right against that postcard and folded fabric, and we're going to trim the first piece of fabric. So I trim that piece, and now I have the seam allowance that I need for that piece, and I'm going to open up the paper, turn it over, and grab piece number 2. I'm going to lay piece number 2 right sides together with piece number 1 and make sure I have it in position to cover section 2. Then I take it to my machine, fabric sides down, notice I did not pin piece 1 and 2 together. I can hold those pieces well enough that nothing will move in that short distance. I'm going to lower my needle right on the line where the stitching line begins. And I sew right to the end of line 1. You can see the normal setting for my stitches on my little Janome sewing machine. When I paper piece, I turn my stitch length down to this smallest size. I only have 3 settings on this particular machine. You will need to adjust your machine to get these small stitches. When you use smaller stitches in paper piecing, it secures the fabric. It makes it much easier to tear the paper away when you are done with the paper foundation. So besides the 4 steps of paper piecing, we want to remember to shorten our stitch length. I have all 3 sections of this quadrant sewn to their paper foundations. When you put these pieces together, there really aren't any seam lines to match. So what we want to do is, to make sure things line up, is use the points of our pieces, and we will just kind of eyeball there. You can stick a pin straight through the first layer and guide it on the second layer, and then you pinch those 2 together and make sure everything is nice and flat and meets together there. And then you can put a pin in place to hold those 2 layers together as you sew. You're sewing the bottom edge of that long triangle with your 1/4 inch seam. It should line up right there on that paper. We have one side sewn together. I'm going to open this seam up and press it flat. That helps with some of the bulk here at the point of that triangle where those 4 sections will have to meet. And I am leaving the paper on until I get the whole block constructed and put together the way I want it to. So again, I need to add this second triangle. I'm keeping the light triangle to the tip of the kite shape. And I am going to put a pin right in the point of my triangle and line it up there with the point. It should be the starting seam from your previous section, and then just keep that pin horizontal there while I line up the rest of the block. When that's nice and flat, I'm keeping my pin well away from the sewing line so that the needle doesn't hit that at all. And sometimes your if you wanted to take that paper out right there, you could get rid of that little bit of paper that ended up in the seam there that I will be sewing. You can see there's a little bit of bubbling that will relax or even out as you hold the fabric straight and guide it under your needle. We are still using our shortened seam stitch length. and sewing right on the line of that paper foundation. Right to the end of that line. Take our pins out. And we have one quadrant. All the solid lines on our pattern have been stitched, and I will keep that seam finger pressed open. I will keep all the papers on this block, on this quadrant, until the whole block is finished. And you can see my purple version here with all 4 quadrants together. I made a envelope style pillow backing, and that is what one block looks like in the Purple Angles quilt. So I will continue to share some paper piecing tips and tricks over the coming weeks. I look forward to seeing your projects. Please email me with any pictures. Leave comments below on your questions or your suggestions for having fun with paper piecing.
Paper piecing is a lot of fun. What is your favorite quilt technique? Please leave a comment below. And check out this next video to see my favorite traditional quilt block. Please subscribe to this channel. I am here every week with new videos about piecing quilts and free motion quilting designs.